podcast at the age of 42 years old. My guest is the highly recommended Deborah Daughetee. No, you were recommended,
thank
actually.
you.
Yeah. Geez, my brain has completely been fried. Russell Nolte actually spoke very highly of you.
Oh, thank you. That's very
Yeah.
nice to hear.
Yeah. So we met for 10 seconds in San Diego.
That's true. At San Diego
Yes.
Comic-Con.
Yeah, we met for 10 seconds. So tell me a little about yourself.
Well, I have a broken tooth, so please ignore the gap in my teeth.
I have no teeth up here. Don't worry. We're good.
Yeah, I got to get an implant done. I'm Deborah Daughetee. I used to write under Debbie Lynn Smith. I was a television writer for a number of years. I worked on Murder, She Wrote, Touched by an Angel, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. And then I got sick and I couldn't do it anymore. So I switched to, I was doing short stories, mostly in the horror genre.
Okay.
I also wrote audio dramas for Dark Shadows, which was, yes, it was so much fun. And then I had to have a double lung transplant. So I didn't write for a number of years while I was recovering and everything. And now I'm back and I'm writing short stories and audio dramas again. And that's really fun. And so
audio dramas are so cool because you get to play with sound. And it sounds like a really simple thing, but honestly, it's the heart and soul of a good audio drama, right? It's almost like so I take it you love the old school films then Once Upon a Time. Like you really love those old So what happens there, folks, is see old school films I have a buddy of mine, he used to be a director. He let me see some old stuff. He goes, what happened back in the old days was there was a language to cinema that they followed, and it works. It still works to this day. It's not used anymore anywhere to the nth degree it was in the past. So when you see it, in a place you see it the most these days is audio dramas. They tend to actually follow a very old, because you need that stuff in audio or it doesn't work at all, right? So
well, it's actually radio plays. I mean,
yes.
They're calling it audio dramas because we don't listen to the little radio anymore, you know. Yeah, it's actually radio plays, and so you have. It's amazing to me how popular they have become. That people would like to listen to their dramas instead of watching them on TV, let's say, or something. It's just really, especially horror.
Because I actually have a theory. It might sound like a crazy theory. Let's see if you think I'm on something or onto something here.
Okay.
So I actually blame video games, and here's why. Television back. We all know television is kind of on its decline simply because it's outside of sporting events. Nobody watches regular cable or television with any kind of regularity anymore. There's a few exceptions to that, but it doesn't click the same way. I think what I see for me, I know there are guys like me, like when I do my luxury time when I'm not creating, which could be either I have to read because it's part of what we do, but also, okay, what else do I want to do? And I would rather, if I'm having us downtime, play a video game over the television because it's much more mentally stimulating than a TV show can be. I think an audio drama, especially if for two parts, for that reason, and also the fact that when I'm working on something, I don't necessarily have the luxury to watch something, but I'm free to listen to something all the time. So that's why podcasts do well right now. It's because, as a general rule of thumb, you have this luxury when you're doing a podcast to, you can make it more about the hearing, the sound. Like this show is bare bones crazy, just listening to random stuff and talking to people about anything. But if I were to do an audio drama, I mean, I would be thinking about sound effects and tension and music. And people like those highs. You can listen to something and still work on something. But
Well,
it's also
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no. I have a big mouth. My last thing I was going to say.
Well, also,
Last
I just wanted to add that horror, in horror, you can't rely on a cat jumping out of a closet to scare somebody.
no.
You know, you have to really work for, scares, for making people disturbed. It really has to be character driven. The sound is an important part of it for setting the mood and the scene and all of that kind of stuff. So uh, you can't not television or movies rely a lot on visual because it's a visual medium, so that makes sense. But they started using it as a crutch, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you could okay. I would say this straight up. There's good movies. There's good
Yes,
shows
there
in
are.
every generation. Every generation of television has them, but you can tell, and I think it's become, especially doing what we do, it's more apparent when someone's cutting corners,
Yeah.
right? It's a lot more apparent when someone's cutting corners. And again, sometimes it's budget, like sometimes like you understand why they're doing it, but other times it's very much how it's very much a um I do believe that there is a ton of people that are in the business that don't fully understand what the again, I'm not saying go back completely to the old ways, but there were like talk about making a cat jump and scare you, right? You can still create a spooky response with the cat, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
work. But you have to work at it, right? You can't just you can do a lot with a little. And I look at something like um so I like again old stuff like Alfred Hitchcock did an awful lot with very 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 little, and the reason he did is he understood story. He engaged with the readers or listeners or watchers imagination whenever he chose to do. He deliberately made a conscious effort to do it. This is why I say I'm going back to like the video game argument real quick. Video games, although often don't necessarily have to be visually the most stimulating thing in the world to be a great game, right? So it does, and because you're participating in the game, you are forced to use your imagination a little bit to play it. That's where I think video games get the most reward. And I think a typical television show, the big obstacle they have to overcome is okay, how do I engage with people's imagination today? But I also would argue that a lot of television goes, do they even think to do that?
Yeah. I forgot to mention the most important thing. I own Kymera Press, which is a graphic novel publishing company. And we use women creators and artists and stuff. I wanted to give a platform for women in the comics industry. And I think that comics and graphic novels, even though they're a visual medium, they do what you say. They actually rely a lot less on writing. Um, I tell people who come to me who want to write comics, you don't have to be a great writer, but you have to be a great storyteller. So your
Yes.
story has to be great, and you have to be able to convey that to your artist. And so you're not like in a short story or even, audio dramas and stuff. Audio drama is not so much, but anyway, you really stop and choose your words. You really think about how the sentences go together and the rhythm of the paragraph and that sort of thing. And you don't do that in comics. You write, okay, this takes place in Victorian England. I would like the building to look like this and put in a link to an internet, things like that. But you have to be able to tell a good story and have good dialogue. So that art, it's the art that pulls you in, and it's the art that is immersive in a graphic novel and that plays with your imagination, almost like you're watching a television show on paper.
Well, okay, so comics are play with the illusion of motion.
Yes, they do.
That's what they do. Like that's what. So I would argue that the good writing in a comic is the people that understand, okay, what's good here that the audience is seeing. They're actually making a conscious decision. What is the audience seeing? What is the audience not seeing? Because that's going to create that illusion of the passage of time.
But it's the collaboration between the artist and the writer that makes that happen.
Absolutely.
The writer has to be good enough that they can't put like two actions in one panel, because one person can't do two things in one panel. It's a static thing.
Yes.
So, if you're going to have them walk across the room, you can't have them walk across the room, stop and talk to somebody, and then go to the closet in one panel. You have to have that in two panels. And so you do need to learn how to write that flow. However, it really is the artist who takes that and makes it flow.
That's right. Well, the art, like I've said this before, and I say this with all due respect to even comic writers, like your illustrator or however you want to call it, pencil or inking team, pencil or colorist team, they're the ones that are creating the tone, and they're creating the tone, and they are dictating the pace of the story based on what you give them. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, like I talk about, I've mentioned this in other shows, finding the right artist to tell your story. That's important. What you're actually saying is not how pretty necessarily the pictures are. Now, some books require really pretty pictures, mm-hmm. but it's how that illustrator conveys the information or tells the story themselves.
It's true. But still, the writer does tell the artist what tone they want.
Absolutely. Again, dismissing the writer completely is also is a terrible thing to do too, but what I notice is, like, if I'm a writer, like when I'm looking at someone that draws, what I'm actually looking at is what do they do well. Right. Because it's not about how pretty the pictures are. That can definitely attract somebody to look at the book. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at telling a great story for a very long time, you need an artist that not just draws well, but that understands. There are some artists that are great cover artists. They're not so great interior artists.
Exactly. They really have to understand sequential art. That's what it. That's whenever I go and I look at an artist, I ask them, are you an illustrator or are you a sequential artist? Because that tells me, if they're an illustrator, that tells me that they haven't looked at sequential art. I might consider that artist for a cover, but I won't consider them for, the inside of that. But when I'm looking for an artist, I'm looking for somebody who can get that flow of the story, who can get the we have the first artist I ever worked with was Amelia Wu for the graphic novel that I write called Gates of Midnight, and I just loved her. I found her because I'm a big fan of Patricia Briggs, and she did the inside art for Patricia Briggs' graphic novel for Mercy Thompson, which I'm a huge Mercy Thompson fan. And so when I was looking for an artist to do Mary Shelley Presents, which is Mary Shelley and her monster introducing short stories from Victorian women horror writers. Yeah. I asked Amelia because I knew that she could handle the darkness and yet the Victorian kind of feeling. And Nancy Holder, who writes Mary Shelley Presents, loved her. Now Amelia does both the pencils and the inks, and usually I don't do that, but I do that for her. And then we had a colorist from Ireland. And then we had, our letterer who lives in Florida. And we won a Bram Stoker Award for that book.
Nice.
Yeah. So, it's just really about who can handle the tone, who can handle the flow, and who can give us the kind of art we're looking for.
Yeah. I have used illustrators in graphic novel work a little bit. It
Mm-hmm.
depends. Like what I find is, so I'm actually working on a graphic novel. I'm not good
Oh,
enough
you are?
to. Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
I- but I'm doing a homage to Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451.
Okay, you
Right.
cut
That's what
out
I'm
there.
doing.
Say it
It's
again.
like what?
You cut out there.
Sorry.
Say it again. You're
I'm
working on
doing
a.
I'm working on a graphic novel. It's a homage to Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, one of my
Oh,
favorite
cool.
books.
Okay.
Right. But I decided, since I am, how do I put this? I would call myself at best competent at drawing. But as you so pointed out, right, it's not about how good you are visually, it's how well you tell a story.
Yeah.
Right. So I decided to do kind of a mixture between a prose book and an illustrated story. That's kind of what
Oh,
I'm
okay.
doing.
Cool.
Yeah. So the comic pages, which aren't a ton of them, but there are a few, are actually based off Twitch streams.
Okay.
Because I thought, make it easy for myself, because I'm lazy and stuff, and right, if you're laughing already, you're just like, that's funny, right? And but no, but like, because I'm looking at the story I'm telling, and the story is about, is, instead of the joy of reading, it's this, the reason why I'm drawing it is discovery of art. I started drawing for just fun 3-4 years ago. I'm not going to pretend I'm good exactly, but that's not really why I did it. I did it to have fun. But I'm like, the joy of discovery of art could be a really cool basis of a homage to a Ray Bradbury, like a classic Ray Bradbury story, right? So that's what I'm doing. So there's a lot of just regular illustrations throughout the book instead of a typical comic. But
Mm-hmm.
it serves two purposes. It's his discovery as an artist, but also it's because I'm not necessarily, again, it's knowing my own strengths and weaknesses, right? I don't think I am not anywhere close to ready to do a full-fledged sequential comic book story. I'm not there, and I know it, but I don't have to be to
No, you
still tell
don't.
that. Yeah, right. I don't have to be tell that story.
You
I
know,
can.
as long as you're having fun, I mean, I think that's about all of this, all of the work that we do as writers. I did a novella for Moonstone called well, it's a Night Stalker. Do you remember Kolchak, the Night Stalker?
Yes, I do actually.
Yeah, so it's a Kolchak, the Night Stalker story, and I had so much fun because I loved that when I was growing up. I loved the Night Stalker, and I ended up working for Dan Curtis for a while, who produced it, and so I turned that in. Joe really liked it, so he asked me to do this Night Stalker Sherlock Holmes crossover sequel to something that had already been published by Moonstone. And I'm like, yeah. I mean, it's so
Nice.
much fun. That's what I love. You should love what you're doing. It's too hard if you don't love it.
Oh no, it's absolutely, putting a comic together is harder than putting together a novel.
It's
I'm
really
speaking from
hard.
experience. No,
Mhm.
because it requires, like, I think, okay, I will say this for television and films: a good television and a good film is a bit of a miracle, because it's a combination of great creative and good people doing the show.
Mhm.
And considering the amount of people required to do a television show or a movie, that can be a very, you'd have to be a good conductor to an orchestra to get a really good film. That's literally how I would equate that, right? Because it's not just one piece; it's all of them working together to create a film.
Very
Comics,
collaborative. Very
comics,
collaborative.
yes, absolutely. No, super collaborative. Comics are like, so if television is an orchestra, comics are a rock band, right? That's what comics are. You like the image. I can tell you
I
like that
do
image,
like the image, yeah.
right? Comics are a rock band. It's a smaller group of people, but that doesn't make it any less difficult. It makes it in some ways more difficult. Like, not all of us are talented enough to do everything themselves, right? Not all of us are, but but even so, even the ones that are super 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 talented, it's I can do everything. Still need an editor. Still need people that can look at their work critically and go, "This is awesome. This sucks."
Right.
Right? You need that. Every creative person needs that because it's a shocker. I know it's a shocker to me every time, but my shit stinks. I know it's shocking to some people to hear it like that, but it's true. And I say it like that because I want people to understand it's not that the work is terrible or the work that it's just you need someone to help you separate the forest from the trees, minimum. But most of us have a writer. Most of us have we'll say a penciler. There's a classic term for it, a penciler, a colorist. Inking is a bit of a mix these days. It's not. It's kind of been coloring has become more important in today's comics, and inking a separate inker.
I have to totally disagree because I think the inker really brings, and I think they get largely forgotten. They bring a very important aspect of shading, and
Yeah.
they play a lot with tone,
Mm-hmm.
with their shading and the way that it's not just about outlining,
No,
it's
it's not.
it's a lot more than that. And so, I mean, we have a wonderful inker that we use, and we started with her, and she has just grown and grown and grown, and that's exactly what I wanted to see. And she actually has her own comics now and everything, and I mean, she's just amazing. Yeah,
That's
Lori
awesome. No,
Foster. Lori Foster.
I'm not. Oh, by the way, just for clarity, I'm not trying to belittle the inking role. I actually think that honestly, it's them and the letterers in comics that get the most, like the least amount of credit for what they
That's
do.
right. True.
Right, but because a good letterer, you never notice how good they are until there's until something goes awry, or there's that
Right.
rare exception where the lettering is an important part of the story, right? And there are exceptions to that, but by and large, the letterer goes unnoticed. But what I mean by inking is I find that like a lot of traditional, like put an inker was traditionally used for, say, even 10 years ago versus what they're used for today. I'm not saying they're not used, but I find that a lot of colorists also ink, and I also find that with the way like technology has evolved, right, it has allowed it has the inker has become somewhat sandwiched, all right, between penciling and coloring, right. Not there aren't very many or as many straight inking jobs anymore. I've noticed, and I
Well,
just
that
look at it, and that
it's always been hard to find inkers because they don't get paid as much.
yes,
Pencilers get paid a lot more than
which makes
inkers do.
yeah.
Um, so, and it's the same with letterers.
Yes.
Letterists, and basically letters. If you notice the lettering, they're not doing their job because you're the way you read a comic is you look at the art, and then your eyes just glance at the dialogue that's going on and stuff, but the story's being told and I'm not a big fan of sound effects. I don't like them at all. um, but my letterer has convinced me that she can do it. She can put in sound effects in a few places that need them without it looking hokey or things like that. So
Oh, well, I'm a big fan of. Yeah. There's a fine line with that because it's the tone of the story, right? It's really easy to use sound effects. Let's say that if I want, what I'm talking about, like stories that are bad on purpose, right?
yes,
Right. Then I want all the sound effects. Give me all of the sound effects. It's gonna be
but that's
epically.
like Batman, the television show. Pow, you know.
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, this goes back to some text to what we were talking about earlier with horror, right? Yes, sound effects in lots of places become very, 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 very hokey, right? And yes, folks, I blame Batman. But it's actually all right. Hey, folks, we are just gonna say this here. It's Batman's motherfucking fault. You can swear, by the way, on my show.
And I love Batman. I still love, to this day, I love Batman.
Yeah, but that bastard ruined sound effects. He did. He ruined them, right? And don't get me wrong. Hey, listen. If I had to dress up, if I'm an actor, if I'm a production crew, having to dress up, I watch a dude dress up as a bat, and Burt Ward kind of dressed off as a mini Chippendale dancer, and you have all these classically, and honestly, you should look at that cast, folks, of the Batman show, right? All these guys are almost all of them are classically trained, like epic actors in their own right. Like, it's amazing. God. You're right. Right. This was their day job. Like, this is the thing you got to understand about the Batman show. This was their day job, because why? It was regular work. They got a paycheck on a regular basis to do it. So they realized,
and they probably had a great time.
Oh, no. But see, here's why they had a great time. This is why they had a great time, right? They realized how absurd this whole thing was, right? So they're like, okay, I'm getting paid to do this, so let's have some fun. And all of them embrace that idea completely, right? You could tell, like certain bad guys in particular. I think the guy that ironically had the least fun was the Joker. And the reason why I say that is because he had to be painted out his face for freaking ever. I probably drove him a little nuts, right? But I mean, it would drive me nuts. I mean, to any actor, actress that has to sit on the chair for longer than 2 hours to get their makeup done, salute. You have my respect, because that would drive me freaking crazy. Right?
I actually met him. He was on a show called Jack's Place, and I was working on Jack's Place, and I actually got to meet him, and it was like so exciting. I was such a fangirl, but that was truly exciting. I think the only, and I met Adam West when I was a little girl. He was in Ohio, and my father was a police officer, and a friend of his was doing security for him. And so they let us come up and meet him and get his autograph and all that kind of stuff. And it was so exciting.
Yeah, that's right. And honestly, no, it's cool when you get to do those opportunities. Do exist, and they come unexpectedly, and you can make really cool moments, right? So I mean, I take it like both of them are related. I take it they both were nice.
Oh, both of them were very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? So I'm like, these are currently people with a bizarre, like, let's be honest, a little bit of an unusual day job, right? And they looked at it and they said to themselves, we're gonna make this fun, right? We can do our serious shit somewhere else. So we're going to go here and we're going to just embrace the silly. And the thing is, you cringe at all that stuff. Some of that stuff is like pun level cringeworthy these days, right? Like just terrible shit. But every single person that was on that show had fun with whatever they did in it. Like, again, some shows, some things out there don't necessarily exist to be good. They exist to be fun. And as long as you can feel that fun, right, people will enjoy it.
Well, let's talk about Dark Shadows. I mean, Dark Shadows. Did you ever see Dark Shadows? Are you old enough to see Dark Shadows?
I'm not quite old enough. I'm close.
Yeah.
So well, I'm not quite Shadows,
old. It started out in black and white. It had major actors in it, and upcoming actors in it. And things would happen, like, part of the scenery would fall down, or flies would get in, and people would be, because it was shot live. Okay, and so you watch it today and you laugh at it and that sort of thing, but not back then. You didn't even notice those things back then. This was like, it was a revolutionary show, just like Batman was revolutionary show. And the first time you've seen anything like it, this was a daytime show. It had vampire on it. The vampire was only supposed to be on it, Barnabas Collins, Jonathan Freed, for 2 episodes. And he got so much fan mail that Dan kept him, of course, because that's what kept the show alive, was this vampire. And then, of course, Angelique, Laura Parker.
Yeah.
You know, and then David Selby, who was the werewolf, you know. I mean, there were just so many great actors, classically trained actors. And yeah, you might look at it today and kind of laugh at it because of the funny things that happened, because it was being shot live. But it was revolutionary, and so was Batman. Batman was revolutionary. Nobody had seen anything like it. It was a comic book on TV.
Yes, it was. And they tried to make it feel like a comic book on TV.
That's right.
That's why sound effects are ruined, ladies and gentlemen. Damn Batman.
Yes.
Right. But again, it changed the game. And like I said, there is, I would argue that even though you got the animated series, that everybody will looks at the 1960s Batman, anybody from any era who's seen it will look at it going, this is so bad. Why can't I get this out of my brain? And because it was fun. And that's the whole point. Like, I'm not saying that, like, that was my first impression of it. It's like, this is terrible. This doesn't take comics seriously at all.
You weren't a kid at that time growing up.
Exactly.
Watching it. And believe me, I mean, even today, I don't think it's bad. I just think
I don't think it's bad.
Wonderful, and it doesn't take itself seriously.
But this goes back to what somebody said earlier. Like that was when I first watched it. I realized it's actually okay. How do I put this? I think it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And right, and because it's fun, it's good. Right, it knew exactly, and that's the whole thing. Like, once you realize, as I get older / wiser, question mark on the wiser. I don't. Some days I really wonder, and other days I'm like, I think I got this figured out. Right, I'm a lot more humble of what I think I can do in some ways. Some ways, my ego's out of control, but that's neither here nor there. Right, but what I will say is, like, you look at things a lot more differently as you get older, and you realize, like, what is the intention? And this is, I think, super important. What is the intention everybody set out to do with what they're building? Right. And again, these guys, and this is my theory, is they all made the decision, we're going to have fun doing this. We're not going to take it too seriously. We're just going to have fun. And we'll come back every time we come work together. We'll come up with something equally stupid to do. And I say that, like, in the most fun way, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to go all in. We're going to go all in the whole time. Like, listen, I will never watch out of my brain Adam West doing the Bat 2C.
I don't know if you can. That was fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see back here, but this is a whole thing of all the different Catwomen that are out there. I was a huge Catwoman fan.
Oh, classic Catwoman's awesome. Like she like, again, there are a few different ones, but each one was like, we're gonna have fun. We are just gonna have
Julie
fun.
Newmar. She, to me, was Catwoman.
Yeah.
Eartha Kitt was so sexy as well, you know. But yeah.
Well, that I mean, let's be honest. That's part of the reason why she got hired. It's like, you look great in that suit. It's like, yes, I do. But we're gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun. You know,
but she's an amazing actress. She's tall. You know, Eartha Kitt is she just oozes sex.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's just, she's an amazing actress and singer.
Yeah, and that's. I mean,
and that was kind of revolutionary because she was a Black woman.
Yes. So, I mean, there you go. Right. I mean, like, they were doing things very quietly during that time. You know, and they were having fun doing it. And that was why it worked. Mm-hmm. Right. And also, but that's why you hate sound effects. That's why you
Yes.
hate them. That's why you hate them. See, that's why you hate them. Because, see, that damn Batman ruined them for you. Right. So folks,
Yep.
the slogan for the episode, blame Batman.
That's right.
I blame Batman for everything. Anyways.
So how is it that you're old enough to do Batman? Did you just watch it?
Well, no, because back so this is I'm not old enough to do Batman, but here's the thing: Batman's in syndication a lot more than Dark Shadows is, and on top of that, so this is how I'm old enough. I am old enough. When I lived in Detroit / Redford, Michigan, I live in Canada right now, but my family's there, so I spend my summers at my grandmother's place. So this is back in the day where we had 4 channels, and also back in the day, right? Now here's something I think it's cool now. Like back then, I was like, "Oh, this is so lame," but I think this is cool now. She still had one of those old black and white televisions that still worked that had those 4 channels. Like, and all of us that are old enough to remember this, folks, like once upon a time, cable was like 5 or 6 channels at most, right? Sometimes most of the time it was 4. But sometimes you get a 5th channel, and you get that 6th channel if you played with the antennas just right and the stars aligned, you get it. So all of which to say that like television there. But one of the things about that era of television is during the day they would play reruns. Well, I'm just a kid.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So I got to watch some of the 60s shows. I got to watch the Jeffersons, the Beverly Hillbillies, and then I also got to watch Batman way back in the day. So that's when I got exposed to that version of Batman, right? Because now like I don't watch hardly any TV at all. Like, but back then there was nothing else for me to do for most of the summer, so I ended up watching a lot of TV. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I still like the Disney Afternoon and Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles from back in the day. That's what I grew up with mostly. But yeah, there was still a little bit of like reruns back in the day from when we didn't have a lot of cable.
Well,
and
yeah, when I grew up, there were 4 channels, and there were 3 network channels. Okay, ABC, CBS, NBC, and then there was Channel 43. And I loved Channel 43 because they played all the old movies. And we had I'm from Ohio, so we had, the host of all the horror movies was Ghoulardi.
Okay.
And Ghoulardi, I loved Ghoulardi. He was on late at night, and I used to stay up, and I'd be downstairs in the basement. We had a TV down there, and that's where I could watch the things that I wanted to watch. My family was interested.
Yeah, I did the same. I did the same thing. My
and
grandmother.
Watched all these
I mean,
wonderful horror movies. With Ghoulardi, who I thought was hilarious. He ended up getting filed. There was a real scandal because he was making fun of this town called Parma, and it was so stupid. But anyhow, when Ghoulardi was on, I absolutely loved him, and loved the movies that he showed, and they scared the hell out of me. That's what I can say. So I guess that was really my introduction to horror. Well, actually, Dark Shadows was my introduction to horror.
So Dark Shadows was your introduction to horror, and then you fell down this rabbit hole of old school horror classics.
That's right.
You decided, I'm going to do my own. I'm going to do this myself.
Yes, I did.
And you did.
I did. And then when I got my jobs on television, I was working for Dan Curtis for 2 years, which was really fun. Dan Curtis did Dark Shadows. He did The Night Stalker. He did Trilogy of Terror, the one with the little doll, that goes ee, 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 with his knife in the floor. Yes. Terrifying stuff. He worked with people like Bill Nolan. Bill Nolan was one of my mentors, along with Dennis Etchison. And they're both gone now. It's very sad. But Richard Matheson would come in to the
Oh,
office, and
wow.
I would sit in on this story meeting, and I would be like, I'm sitting here with Richard Matheson and Dan Curtis, and I'm taking notes, and I know people who would pay to do this, and here I am getting paid to do this. I mean, I loved it.
But you were the right person for the job. Like a lot. Like I have a very so again. I'm just doing this show as long as I've had. I've met lots of people that are really have done really cool things. And what I realized, this is just something I realized, and this is actually a compliment to you. Sometimes the world gives us really cool shit on the journey to what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just gives us something really cool as part of this podcast. As you can see, I've done a lot of these episodes, like I've done a lot of them, and but I've met so many people that are done lots of incredible things, and I get this like little gift of being a small part of it. And the reason why I get this gift is because I enjoy what I do, right? I'm changing it up a little bit because I need to keep it fresh for my own sanity a little bit, right? But I still love talking and meeting people like yourself because you see the world. You've done really cool shit, and you wanted to do this really cool thing. And no, never take for granted what you've done. It's amazing. Right? You had this incredible career. So because you wanted a certain thing, like much like all of us, we all have this vision of what this looks like. And I'm going to bet that the reality that played out was not what you fully envisioned. But there's two sides to that. The first side is, yeah, there would have been some really cool shit you would have liked to have done. But you got really cool shit you never expected, and this falls into that category of right, and that's the thing, like you get those, and that's the stuff that really counts, right? The things you never think you'd get, the things that are just incredible moments, nuggets, little quote unquote little things. That's the shit that matters.
Well, yeah, I mean, I met Dennis because I took a class from UCLA from him,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I met Bill as well. And they talked me into going to a World Fantasy Convention.
Yeah.
So I did, and I met this guy, Mark Bilbo. He said he had read some of my short stories, and he said, you should be writing for television. I'm thinking, right, Ohio girl, no. Anyway, he was a writer's assistant on a show called Tour of Duty, and I was a contracts administrator for a software company, and he called me up and he said, there's an opening for a writer's assistant, which is basically the secretary. You type the scripts and all of that stuff. Do you want to apply for it? And I said, yes. Even though there's, I had a 401k, I had my own secretary, I had all that stuff. I did go and apply for it, and I did take the job, and I learned to write a script on Tour of Duty, and I saw my first script on the very next one with my writing partner, Dana Doyle, which was The Trials of Rosie O'Neill, and that started our career off, and it was just all by accident.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to pay off.
I accidentally got traditionally published. Like my very first, I did a book of poetry that accidentally got traditionally published. It was not the plan; it just happened.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, right. I never planned it. That's the thing. Like sometimes people think like we have this vision of what our future looks like. We always have a vision, and it doesn't always. Again, I'm old enough / wise enough to realize that it's never going to work out exactly how I envisioned it. I don't think that's necessarily a failure. It's just you're putting your will. This is how I look at it. You're putting your will out into the world, and the world's taking that will and it's kind of shaping it. Now, much like art, the world isn't perfect. But I think here's what I think. I think we are guilty of both simultaneously of wishing for the biggest things and settling for the smallest, right? And the world will say to us, nah. I don't know if you're going to get you that. I don't know. But we won't get you just settle here either. will find you somewhere, something cool that's you. And that's what happens if you do this long enough, is you end up doing things that are cool just for you.
Yeah, and
Right?
the other really cool thing that happened to me is I um, was on several panels with Sandy King Carpenter. She has Storm King Comics, and she's also the wife of John Carpenter. And we just hit it off. I mean, we kind of just, had the same ideas about horror and stuff when we were on the panel. It was great. I just really liked her. And I mentioned to her one time, one convention we were at, that I had just written an audio drama for Fever Dreams. That came out last June. The podcast is called Fever Dreams, and that it was horror. And she asked me, she's doing an audio drama thing called John Carpenter Presents. And she asked me if I wanted to write for it. And so it's a series. So a series of 8 episodes is what she wanted from me. So I just handed in an outline to her. I'm waiting to hear back from her to see what she thinks. But she just pulled John Carpenter Presents from one of the platforms. So she's looking for a new platform for it, but she plans on using what I have as part of what she's pitching to the platform of what she has ready to go. So that was really exciting and totally unexpected. And I would love to do that. Are you kidding?
Yeah. Well, as you say, right? Hi, you're right. You're writing stuff for John Carpenter or John Carpenter's wife.
Yes,
Sure,
that's right.
I'm in. Right. Yeah, right. I'm in. It's like I'm in. Yeah. I don't know where this is gonna go, but I'm in, and that's it. Like life's about like the rides you make, right? So I'm gonna see if you're with me on this part. This does tie together. I think Dr. Seuss is one of the 3 best graphic novelists of all time.
Oh yeah.
Right. Sometimes I will mention that to a comic person, and they will actually stop and think about it. But I dare you, put a thought bubble on Fox and Socks where the person's speaking. It actually works as a comic. It legitimately does. But I say it like this is one of my favorite things. The places that are going, the people you will meet going there. There's some truth to that, right? There's some definite truth to that, and especially in entertainment. Right. It's about that willingness to go out there and put yourself out there and saying, here I am, because a lot of people that do this, what we do, are looking for connection as much as we are trying to explain our place in the world and trying to figure it out. I think that's what a good artist ultimately does. Figures out our place of the world and figures out that important thing they may say in that place. But I think the other part of it is we don't want to feel like we're alone out there. And even the people that are really, really successful, like there are moments where you question yourselves and go, am I the only one doing this? I think it's just a part of the human condition, right? So when you see people and you meet people that are doing really cool shit, you're like, I want to work with these people because this no star wants to shine in the sky alone, right? Right. So and that's the thing, right? So you see other people shine, and encourages you to do the same thing. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing, right? And that's what happens. You go out there, you meet the right people at the right places at the right time, right? Exactly. And the next thing you know, you do, right? What I would tell people listening to this or watching this, like one of the biggest lessons I've learned is to always be ready.
Well, what I've learned is I can't force it.
Yep.
It has to happen naturally. It's so hard to meet people and talk to people. Most writers are introverts, even though sometimes they might look like they're extroverts. That is taking as much energy as you can possibly muster. And my husband and I call it being on, because this last year, we drove around the country. I don't know, we did 15 conventions or something all around the country.
Yes.
And it was about being on all the time. It was exhausting.
Oh no, you need that time to charge. You need that time for yourself to charge. But I mean, it's the irony of the world, right?
But it is, but the thing is that you just have to make a connection. You can't exactly force it, you
No.
know. You have to. It has to come naturally, and I can't tell you exactly how that is, but if you go to conventions, if you hang out in bars, somebody might sit down next to you. You know, you guys just start talking about something, you know, and you make that connection, and you find out he's an editor, you know, or something like that.
Well, I go like this, like I know that doing what I do draws people to me,
Sure they do.
Right. The question then it becomes, are they the right people? And then when you're in that position, it's like, are you looking for the right people? And what a lot of times it comes down to is, okay, me and you have just shot the shit for nearly an hour.
Yes.
Right. Right. We have, right? To the point that I would say that if I asked you to do this again down the road, you probably would say yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, right. But again, I didn't force it. I didn't ask you a ton of questions. Right.
No, you didn't send me questions beforehand to study. And
no, I know. And your part of you was like, oh shit, does he know what he's doing? And it's like, well, mostly. Right. Well, right. But some people get really nervous about that sort of thing. And I'm like, man, let him stop. Right. There's a particular kind of person that this style doesn't necessarily appeal to. Right. And it's not a knock to them at all. It's just that's just not how they're wired. But by and large, most people just want to talk and connect and say, hey, you know, what's up? And it's not like in one sense, it's not hard at all. But I think the thing is with writers, and not just writers, artists in general, right? You want to be part of those kind of conversations, but a lot of times you're afraid to take that first step. It's like, what if I look foolish, right? And what I've learned doing this show of all things, it's like, well, the worst that can happen is no. And right. And really, what have I lost? Like, what have I lost if you say no? Nothing.
Well, the other thing that I have, you know, is that not everybody's going to like you. And you know what? That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, they're doing whatever their thing is, and you're doing your thing. And if they think you're foolish, so what? Well, I mean, so what? It's just, of course, you know, I'm to a point where I can't say I don't care. I do care. It will sting a little, but then I go, so what?
Well, it's just there's wisdom, right? It's a wisdom thing, right? I know in your 39 years of life that
thank you.
That you realize, like, the biggest mistake we make when we're young is we try to please everybody. That's not really the correct way to do it. The correct way is, okay, what's going to make me doing this enjoy this, right? And the thing is, once you take a stand on something, this is how this works. You take a stand on anything in this life, right? There's going to be people that walk away from you.
Yes.
There's going to be people that are drawn closer to you. That's just the way it is, right? And there are very few. I found this to my sadness. Is there are very few people that can openly disagree with you or openly right and stay on the path with you these days. Yeah, right. I've learned this. Like, that's a sad thing. I actually like when people disagree with me with stuff because I'm not the only perspective in the universe.
Right.
I'm not the only perspective, and as long as you can understand where I'm coming from, and I can understand where you're coming from, we don't have to agree at the end of the day. We just have to respect each other. That seems to be a lost art these days. right? So what I've accepted is, okay, I'm going to be true to me because I can't pretend to be somebody I'm not. That's going
Right.
to hurt. That's going to hurt me more than anything else I do.
Right.
So I'm going to be the best version of me I can. I'm going to let people make their own choices because I trust them and love them enough as human beings to go, you do you. I'm not going to be on my pulpit going, well, my path is more righteous than yours because my guy has a wig, right? I'm not going to do that, right? I'm going to be more like, I wish you well. Let's have a beer sometime. And hopefully you have the same, I hopefully you have the same philosophy. If you don't,
Yeah.
that right? If you don't, that's cool too. I'm not, again, at this point in my life, you can, like I am not worried about this. And this is an irony, ironically enough. I'm not worried about pleasing everybody anymore. Ironically, I'm getting bigger because I don't care as much, right? And I wish I had realized this sooner, right?
Well,
You're not,
I'm like, if I can stay in integrity, you know,
yeah.
I just don't want to step outside of my integrity. But you said something that I think is really important, and um, there's, you know, a song that says, "What the world needs now is love."
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I believe that what the world needs now is respect, because you can not love somebody because of their belief systems, but you can respect the fact that they have the right to have those belief systems.
I would go one step farther. One step
Okay.
farther. We have a tendency to put people in a box. Okay, let's just say for the sake of argument, we're just going to do an example here. You believe that the sky is blue. I say the
Mhm.
sky is fuchsia.
Okay.
We'll just say that for the sake of argument. Okay, and you can
You're
look out at that
nuts.
sky.
What in the world?
I know exactly, exactly. So, but here's the thing, and I had this I had this really epiphany about people in general. There's a reason people see things the way they do, and very often, more often than not, is not why we think it's the case. Most
Right.
of us don't really go out of our way to go, okay, why do they think this way? And this is true with politics, religion, whatever the case may be. We very rarely take the time to understand each other. Most of the time, they will put people in a box and keep them there. Now, there are extremes on every spectrum, and I don't. There are very few examples where an extreme in any spectrum is healthy, right? Very few. There's a few, but not many. But for the most part, we all have our reasons for going down the paths we go down. So I would go so far as to say this: I'm going beyond respect. I think we do, for if we want to have a variety of perspectives in our lives, we have to try to understand where the other person's coming from, even if at the end of the day we don't agree,
I
right?
kind I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
I don't know that I agree.
that's fair.
Um, I I can respect somebody without understanding where they're coming from. And I mean, like, I'll just, my sister and I have really different beliefs on some of what I think are the most important issues today. Okay.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I don't really understand how she can believe how we can come from the same family, you know, but,
Uh,
but I respect her right to have that belief system, and she respects the fact
sure.
that I have the my belief system, and we just avoid those subjects, because if we talk to each other trying to understand each other, we're going to get into arguments, and it's going to cause resentments and that sort of thing. So we don't.
No. You know what? That's fair. The only thing I would say there, the only thing I say is one of the things that doing this show in particular, like, has taught me, I have to detach from what I detach. I try as to the best of my ability sometimes to detach my own emotions with my beliefs when I listen to other people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not an easy thing to do. Like, it really isn't, because when you have you have your own beliefs. You're going to naturally like align with what you feel is correct. But it is possible to listen to somebody, and if you can take that attachment to that concept out, right? If you can do that, it becomes. I'm not, again. It's not about agreeing. Like, this is what I'm.
No, but I totally agree with you that there
Yeah.
are, because you can have wonderful discourse with people, and they might even
Yeah.
change your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are times when you just have to let it go.
No, and there I'm with you too. Like, I think there are we are all different. And and I say this in like a good way. We all look at the world in a different point of view, and not everything. Look, I'm going to make a bet. 90. We will agree on 90 out of 100.
Yeah.
Right. 90 out of 100. Now, the 10 we disagree on, we might have reasons to disagree on. And some things you and I will be like, in terms of our attachment to those 10 things, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least, 10 being the most, we might be at a 1, 2, or 3. Right. All right. And there are some things we're going to be closer to a 7, 8, 9, hopefully not a 10. Right. Hopefully not a 10. Because I find, again, extremes in anything tend to be bad for everybody. Like, that's what I like. The one thing about this age I've learned is I'd rather a world of moderation than extremes. We don't have that world right now, but that's a bigger discussion for another podcast. What I will say is, yeah, there are some things, you know what, you just know I can't have this discussion without this becoming something else. So let's just not have that discussion.
Right.
And that is, you know what, that's fair. That is totally fair. And then there are other things, you know what? Okay, he thinks the world's future. I don't know what the fuck he's seeing, but you know what? Whatever, it's not hurting me. So right.
Exactly. I mean, my honestly, my husband and I see colors differently.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've gotten into arguments about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, it doesn't matter.
Well, no, it doesn't, right? But also at the same time, it's how you both see the world, right? And once you understand that, once you actually understand that, it is easier to detach. I think one of the hardest things from an ego standpoint to look at is the world is bigger than you. And what I mean by that is my perspective isn't the only perspective in the world, right? And
I learned a long time ago that people don't see the way I see. So, they just see differently. And I have a theory that everybody sees different from everybody else.
Absolutely.
We kind of have agreed on what some things are that we see.
Oh, yeah.
But that doesn't mean we see them the same way. So, I might be holding a glass here, but they're seeing a cup, and we just agreed to call it a glass. Whatever. But anyway, yeah. So, we've been over an hour.
Yeah, I have. Isn't it fun? before we wrap up, I just want to say this. I think the compromise to what we're both saying here, I completely agree with you. We should try to respect each other. More than anything else, we should try to respect each other.
That's respect.
Right? But I think also, if we're wise, right, at least with the things we are comfortable doing so, or even sometimes with things we're a little uncomfortable doing so, try to understand.
I agree.
Because right, try. There might be some things you can't. You know what? And that's like, honestly, nobody's perfect. There are just things we just are. That's just who we're gonna be, and that's fine too. What we have to accept it. What we have to do is, but in the process, we're never too old to grow, ever.
I agree with you.
Yeah, there you go. That's the wonderful happy medium there, right? But you are right. Sometimes it is best to just walk away, right? Sometimes it's just best. I'm going to ask one last question, and then we can wrap this bad boy up if that's what you feel like doing. Okay, we talked about your love of horror. What was it that got you into comics?
I had written this pilot for television called Gates of Midnight, and my producer unfortunately died while shopping it around. And then it was at the time when they picked up Grimm, and it was close in tone to Grimm.
Yeah.
So my agent of the time, Maggie Fields, suggested that I turn it into a graphic novel. And I was thinking, oh no, because when I was a kid, I used to love reading comics, and then they became all like superhero comics, and then that lost me. Okay. And so I love the superhero movies. I don't want mail saying, "Oh, you hate superheroes." No, I absolutely love all of the Marvel movies and some of the DC movies.
I'll say most of the Marvel movies and some of the DC movies.
Yeah,
I'm actually marveled out a little bit, but that's
yeah. I
again,
marveled out because we've been watching, all of the series on, whatever channels they're on. Anyway, so I went to my local store, Alternate Reality Comics here in Las Vegas, and talked to Ralph, and he is so knowledgeable. And I basically said to him, I've been asked to write this graphic novel. I haven't read comics in years. Can you suggest some things? And so he gave me Saga.
That's a good one.
He gave me Why Last Man Standing.
That's also a really good one. Same writer.
He gave me Lazarus.
Solid one.
I fell in love. I was like, oh my God, this is not the comics I was reading when I was a kid.
Oh, Lazarus is a cool concept. I want him to finish.
I know, me too.
I want him to finish.
He's making me crazy with all this side stuff he's doing.
Well, okay, again, in all fairness to Mr. Rucka, if he's getting paid stupid piles of money to do the side stuff, I can't, again, as a professional, I can't blame him.
Well, I'm talking the side stuff for Lazarus.
Yeah.
He went way far away from the original story and started doing.
Again, from what I remember about Lazarus, it was going to be a series, a television series at one point. I don't know.
That's right. You talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he might, again, depending on what's going on there, might be why he might be doing the world building material. Like, so I actually have a theory about this. Like, some of the way he did later was world building material for the actual television show, when it shows up. He's got all this background,
and it's good stuff.
It's okay. I think the original story is better.
I do too. More original.
I think, well, it's also like it's the original stuff's more character driven. That's right, and I think that's the thing. I think from I get the plot, but I think sometimes Rucka gets mislabeled as a character writer. He's actually a plot writer with some good characters that he's really comfortable doing. That's my opinion of him.
Well, this discussion right here is what got me back into comics.
Yeah.
Because it was storytelling. It was amazing. It was fun. It was interesting. And I was like, okay, I want to do this. Okay. And so I took a year. I took seminars. I read all the books. I studied scripts. The scripts I was able to get my hands on. And then I wrote my Gates of Midnight, and thank goodness for Amelia that she was, so accomplished at that time, because I made a lot of mistakes, and I made the mistakes, and I would look at the art, and I could see that I made a mistake, in the pacing, in not having panels large enough for the inciting incident. You have that moment. You have to take that moment, and had to have her redraw them and things like that. She was just a consummate professional, and helped me out a lot. And I learned by doing. by writing them. And then I went to conventions and there were no women on the panels. And Maggie wanted to do a publishing company with me. And I said I'd do it if we used all women because I wanted women up on the panels. And there's lots of women on the panels, thank goodness. But usually there's still, anyway. But that's how I started Kymera Press, was with, because I wanted to do realistic looking women, no tits and ass. Okay. I wanted realistic looking men. I wanted diversity. I didn't want to do superhero stuff. So, and I love superhero stuff. Once again, I just didn't want to I didn't want to compete in that arena. There's no way I could compete in that arena.
Well, like I said, we all have, and honestly, just anyone listening to this, we all have our flavors of ice cream.
That's right. That's right.
Right. Superheroes are essentially vanilla and chocolate. We've accepted that in comics, at least, they're vanilla and chocolate. But there's all the other ones, right? As long as she isn't one of those tiger stripe ice cream things, we're good. It's all good, right? So, but I mean,
yeah. So that's how I got into comics. That's how I started at Kymera Press. My lung condition, my lung disease, was caused by a toxic chemical in the butter flavoring of microwave popcorn. And it's called diacetyl. And when you make butter microwave popcorn and you open up the bag and it smells so good, well, that chemical has become airborne and it gets into your lungs. The workers in the popcorn factories and the flavoring factories now have to wear full environmental suits when they're working with it, because there were so many lawsuits from the workers. They say that it doesn't affect consumers, but it did. It does.
It does.
And I was in production. There was a lot of microwave popcorn around. It was free, Anyway, I got money. And that's how I started Kymera Press. That's how I paid for it. Now I have to pay with Kickstarter. That money has run out.
But that's okay. I mean, I would again, we're not going to stay too much longer because we've definitely gone over the hour and you're being very gracious and stuff. But
yeah, we're going to go see The Exorcist after this.
Okay, so I'll let you. So the only thing I will say is, how long has Kymera? I'm going to ask real quickly. How long has Kymera Press been around?
Since 2015.
Okay, so since that time, actually, you've watched. I think this is just my opinion. We're in the midst of another comics revolution, and the thing I think what's really interesting about this one is the big two aren't really part of it.
I think you're right.
You're right. They're not. I think what's happened. So traditional publishing in the book industry has become very corporate. There's nothing wrong. Again, I'm not gonna. Again, this isn't about damning any particular group. It's just this is where things have gone. So there is a very specific flavor of ice cream that traditional publishing in books do. Same with comics. There's a very specific flavor of ice cream. By and large, there's some exceptions. There's Boom, there's Image. Dark Horse dabbles with this a little bit. There's a couple other companies I could name. But what it comes right down to is a lot of spots in this pie, they've all clustered in this one spot. And what's happened is there's a lot of readers in a lot of places that aren't being served. And I think what's happened with Kickstarter, who I think not so secretly might be the biggest publisher of comics in the world right now, right, has created these windows where people can reach their readers in a way that I think, I'm going to be very curious where DC and Marvel are at literally inside of in the next 10 years. Because a good chunk of my money goes to Kickstarter now, right? I don't buy what I used to buy at the comic shop, and it's not a knock to.
I do too.
Right?
I mean, that either I get them through trades with other indies at conventions. We do a lot of trading, for comics and stuff, or Kickstarter. I get them from Kickstarter. So yeah.
Yeah, like that's where the really good stories are. I can think of a lot of great creative people that are. I mean, there are people that absolutely kill it on Kickstarter, but even just establishing their audience, you can use
Yeah,
Kickstarter
Lori
for that.
Foster, who I was talking about before,
Yeah.
she kills it. She has a Kickstarter on right now that is just going gangbusters. I'm so happy for her.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very big part of the like I think it's part of things like comics are no longer it's almost back to the old days, like the old days back when EC Comics was kicking ass and taking names, that you had this diverse you have so many diverse books out there that the age again, there's always going to be Batman. I blame Batman though. I'm going to always blame him, but there's always going to be a Batman. There's always going to be an X-Men. There's always going to be a Spider-Man. But I don't know if there's going to be like I can see a world where when my nostalgia fades with all this other stuff I'm collecting Darkwing Duck and gargoyles right now for
Yeah.
like a kid. But that nostalgia comes and goes. When that nostalgia fades, I'm going to be focusing back on again Kickstarter, right? Because that's where the good books are.
Well, we're going
And
to be, Kymera Press is going to be having a Kickstarter probably in February, so we can finish off our Dragon series. So
nice.
So take a look for us.
Oh, hey, we can talk. I mean,
Okay.
we can talk. We can talk. So that all said, I think we have an interview here. What do you think?
I think so.
So
thank you so much, and happy birthday.
Thank you. Before I disappear, you should plug something. Like obviously you should plug something like either a book that's out recently or your press or your show. What do you want to plug to wrap this up?
Okay. I will plug a couple of things.
Sure.
Okay. I have a story in this book, Castle Horror YA. Okay. That's a young adult story. Wonderful writers in here. Most of us are, do media tie-in. Media tie-in is like the Dark Shadows audio dramas I did, or the Night Stalker, or people who do the novelizations of video games or movies. And this is another one it's called Double Trouble. And I love the story in this one. I took, because it's a matchup between two different characters, I took the very first female superheroes that came out in the 40s and put them I modernized them and put in a modern day setting in Africa. So I love that. So it's called Double Trouble, and they're both available on Amazon.
Okay.
And please check me out at kymerapress.com, and that's KYMERA press.com.
All right, folks. Trained professional. See?
Yes.
Trained professional. I almost know what I'm doing. Don't tell anybody. Anyway. Is that how people can find you?
And they can email me at Lynn Smith, DLYNN Smith at kymerapress.com.
There you go. There you go. All right.
That's it. Yes.
All right, folks. We got one more conversation next week or tomorrow. Madeline Holly Rosing's husband has a really, really, really cool job, and
yeah, he does.
And he does, but also, I mean, and sweet dude. And we were supposed to have this conversation 2 weeks ago. Both of us kind of messed up because I was like, are we going to chat on Zoom? And I never heard back from him. So it was just like, I assumed like he just didn't want to do it. And then it's like the day comes, are we supposed to do it? I never heard you confirm Zoom or anything like that. So I just assumed you didn't want. So we're doing it again tomorrow. And long story short, as Debbie will tell you, I am certainly not perfect, but I do my best. And anyways, but for everybody watching, listen, if you want to support, like I'm still doing travel show. I'm going to be doing Twitch streaming a little longer than planned, although not as many, because I'm at that point where I'm focusing on turning this to a travel show. But if you want to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/justjoshing podcasts. $5 a month gets you some really cool episodes. I'm gonna actually have a new one up tonight. Because now that I'm off on my birthday, that's what we're doing. So that'll do it, folks, for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. For everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll see you guys next time.
Bye.